Hey folks, David Tao with barbend.com. Stage 1 of the 2020 Reebok CrossFit Games is in the book. We have our top 5 qualifiers on the women's side and the men's side. These are the 10 athletes who will be competing in aerobics in October to determine the fittest on earth. But you don't want to hear from me just talking. Let's get right to it to show you the qualifiers. On the women's side, no surprise, after 3 event wins in a row to start the weekend and consistent performances throughout the rest of the events, 3-time defending CrossFit Games champion Tia-Clair Toomey right at the top. Following her is Brooke Wells of the United States, Haley Adams of the United States coming in third in this qualifying round, Katri David's daughter, the 2-time Reebok CrossFit Games champion from 2015 and 2016, who really had to come from behind. She won 2 events on the final day of competition to catapult her into this top 5. And then Kari Pearce of the United States, who was on the bubble. It was unclear whether she was going to qualify basically all weekend, does manage to secure that 5th place spot. Now, it's worth noting the points will be reset before the finals in Aromas, California, so these 5 athletes will be throwing down with a completely blank slate. Let's go over to the men. In first place, no surprise here, 4-time defending CrossFit Games champion Mathew Fraser, another commanding performance on the weekend to take the top qualifier spot. Following him, it looks a little bit like the podium at last year's games. Ohlsen, who finished second behind Fraser at the 2019 Reebok CrossFit Games, will also qualify for the finals. Medeiros of the United States will be the 3rd place qualifier heading into Aromas. Kwant, also of the United States, a lot of American flags on this leaderboard so far, will qualify in that 4th place spot. And then Jeffrey Adler of Canada, in a fight that seemed to last the entire weekend, does manage to come away with that 5th place qualifying spot. And just to remind you, the points will reset before the finals in Aromas, so all of these athletes will be competing with the blank slate. It doesn't matter what place they finished within that top 5 heading into the finals, just that they made that top 5. Now, to break down some outstanding performances from events 5 and 6 during stage 1 of the 2020 Reebok CrossFit Games, I'm joined in our Brooklyn studio by Ben Garvis. Ben, who stood out to you for better or for worse on event 5?
Katri Davis' daughter came out fired up and ready to go. She took both events on the women's side. So that is 200 points, launching her up the leaderboard. That was fascinating to watch. One of the cool parts of that was the handstand hold in event 6. That handstand hold she held 41 seconds longer than second place Kari Pearce. When you're talking an event that only lasts 2 to 3 minutes, that's a 30% increase from second place, which is really great. Now, event 6, Ohlsen, we knew that he has a gymnast background, which meant that we had some high expectations, but in the past, when we're looking at events like a handstand walk, he hasn't necessarily consistently outperformed Mathew Fraser, so we were still thinking Mathew Fraser would do great there. But here we go, lo and behold, at the end of the day, the statistics show something else. Ohlsen besting Mathew Fraser in a handstand hold.
Event 7, Awful Annie, the final event of stage 1, and in many ways the most important event for a lot of these athletes on the bubble.
Yeah, I mean, what an incredible event to watch. I have to say, Mathew Fraser, 5th event win this weekend. He edged out Brent Vikowski in second place by 15 seconds. Just an overall fantastic show of fitness.
Now let's talk about events that some people want to see contested at the finals at the Dusty Castro Ranch in Aromas, California, a little later this year. I caught up with Jeremy Austin. He's a CrossFit Games commentator and an affiliate owner, and there's one event from 2009, that was the last year that the entire CrossFit Games were at the ranch, that Jeremy wants to see contested again because he thinks it's a fantastic and very difficult test of fitness.
The sprint up the hill with sandbags. We did see a little bit of a repeat a couple of years back when they had the GHD and Medball run up the hill. It just didn't have the same stimulus. It didn't have the same hurt factor. I would love to see him replicate that just as it was, maybe with a little bit heavier sandbags this time, but just that same time domain. I did notice though on the overhead shots of the ranch, they have dug out a little bit of that track up the hills. I'm not sure if that'll impact it at all.
Now, that hill sprint event is legendary. I've talked to a few athletes who actually competed in that games and completed that event back in 2009. And Jeremy's right. A lot of them will still say it is not only the toughest CrossFit Games event they've ever done, a lot of folks say it's actually the toughest workout they've ever done. And multi-time CrossFit Games athlete Pip Malone agrees with Jeremy. She wants to see the athletes have to do some sort of nasty workout on that hill.
It's the ranch, so there's no flashy lights. There's none of the romance that's out in Madison. So I think they can get real gritty with some of the workouts and put them through hell. So I think I'd like to see that more than anything, rather than the flashy tennis stadium-esque type workouts.
Speaking of nasty workouts, Australian CrossFit Championship Director Darren Coughlin had some interesting things to say about what these top 10 athletes will need to prioritize over the next month of training before the finals, as well as what they need to keep in mind when balancing volume and intensity.
I think you've got to go for quality, not quantity, and you've got to go for speed. CrossFit is a sport that has a stopwatch to it. So moving for 5 hours at 80% of your capacity is irrelevant. You need to move, on the long end, maybe 20 minutes at 100% effort. So I would be focused on quality. I'd be focused on quality of movement, and get your lifestyle in order. Get practice being under stress, practice switching on and off, and trying to stay focused. I think that's the biggest thing.
I also caught up with Men's Health Fitness Director Ebenezer Samuel, and Eb has a long history covering a wide range of sports, everything from pro team sports to individual sports and Olympic sports. You name it, Eb's covered it. There's one test from the NFL Combine that Eb really wants to see contested at the CrossFit Games. If not this year, then in a future iteration.
I'd love to just see max reps of, say, 225 on the bench press. And so many reasons for that. I think when you talk about these as the best athletes in the world, and I know that's how they're built, the reality is we can't really compare them to NFL players, NBA players, etc. So I've always kind of found that comparison a little bit hollow, because it's not, there is no kind of cross comparison, right? But if you set Matt Fraser on the 225-pound bench press and he does that 50 times, I can compare that to what they do at the Combine, and it just creates a little bit something where it actually translates beyond the sport. So I'd love to see that. I'm not counting on it, though.
The bench press, not something we see CrossFit athletes do a whole lot, but something that I personally would really like to see as a spectator. So I kind of agree with Eb. It'd be interesting to see that, if not at the finals this year, maybe in a future iteration of the CrossFit Games. Really appreciate that insight from the Men's Health Fitness Director. And if you like the insight you're hearing here, make sure you subscribe to Barben's YouTube channel if you haven't already. You're already on YouTube. It's a big website. We know you come back time and time again. You don't have to lie to yourself. You don't have to lie to me. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on all things strength. Now, it just wouldn't feel like CrossFit Games season if we weren't looking to previous CrossFit Games to try and figure out who has an advantage going into this year's finals. Ben, what does history tell us going into this year's finals?
First of all, you, me, the audience, all of our Ben's friends, we are all going to be relieved to know that I really expect one more barbell event. We're not done with the barbell. So we saw the snatch 3 times in 2019. So far, we've seen it no times. Something interesting about that, though, all 3 snatch events, all 3 event wins, Matt Fraser and Tia-Clair Toomey. We haven't seen odd object work. That's always a fan favorite, whether it's the sled, the snail, the pig, anything else. Dragging a rescue Randy down a football field. We're not going to have a football field, but maybe dragging a rescue Randy up a hill. That's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, there's no body of water at the ranch, but we're not necessarily that far from a body of water. They could drive, do an ocean swim, come back, depending on how they can do that safely. Noah Ohlsen, fantastic at a swim. Matt Fraser has improved and now is just sitting top of his field for the run. So there is going to be a matchup to watch there.
All right, anyone that might be in a little bit of trouble heading into this finals?
I've been keeping an eye on Katri Davis-Daughter and Brooke Wells. 2 legendary athletes have been in the games pretty consistently for the last couple of years. This weekend, both of them fantastic performances. But potentially, the movements they are historically really great at have already come and gone. Obviously, that helped them out this weekend, but heading into the actual in-person event and the finals, I question whether or not they are going to struggle with those final events.
Or at least we might not expect to see events that are their true wheelhouses right there.
Exactly. They could surprise us. They now know potentially what it is that they're looking forward to. They have potentially a month to train for it. It's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
Thank you for your insight as always, Ben.
Absolutely.
We are super excited to watch next month's finals in Aromas, California. It'll be really interesting to see if any of the athletes in this very small field can knock Tia-Clair Toomey and Mathew Fraser off the top of the podium. We'll keep you up to date with everything you need to know heading into the finals on barbend.com.